Today I want to unpack 3 verses about the devil, or Satan, from a mainstream evangelical perspective and show you how foolish and ridiculous they are and why Christianity fails. And then I want to end with a thought experiment for Christians. Welcome everyone. I'm H.G.Roberts, author of On Monsters and Phantoms, a memoir about my extreme religious trauma and deconversion from Christianity. And here's the book, and it's linked to below to purchase on Amazon. I promise you, it'll be one of the most mind-bending and dark stories you'll ever read if you're into that sort of thing. But it has a happy ending, my deconversion, and eventual healing. I like to say it's the only book you'll want to put down because it's so intense and personal that you'll need to catch your breath and regroup every once in a while. So read it at your own risk if you want to see what religious trauma really looks like for some of us. It's real talk about real issues. So for many who are suffering from or have suffered from religious trauma, the fear of hell, Satan, and demons are a major source of trauma, especially when the Bible in Ephesians 6:12 tells us, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Christians are made to believe spiritual warfare is real. We hear sermons about the enemy or the devil or Satan, these unseen spiritual forces bent on manipulating, harming, and ultimately destroying us unless we have Christ's protection. And even then, we're not guaranteed safety, as I'll get into. Demons can possess us and hijack our minds, apparently. Has anyone actually stopped to think about how that actually works physiologically? According to the Bible, demons cause mental illness and even disease. Apologists even have names for various demons and the nefarious things that they do. There are other videos all over YouTube about alleged and debunked demon possessions and exorcisms. There are thousands of books about this. And the scholarly literature has something to say about the mental harm believing in demons and demon possession can cause. Adults and children have to grapple with all this, even children who may have already experienced other traumatic events. It's dangerous and unhealthy to teach about and proclaim the reality of these supernatural evil agents and what they can do and will do to us. Although I will say many Christians don't take all this as seriously as the Bible does, and I'll touch on that toward the end of the video as well. So I'm not going to get into the history and mythology of Satan or Lucifer or the devil. Elaine Pagels has a great book about this if you're interested. There's plenty of other scholarship around that as well. And like anything biblical, you'll find conflicting sources. But once I started critically examining the Bible's Satan narrative, the whole Bible fell apart. I asked these questions. Why do we even have a Satan, an adversary, an enemy, an antagonist in the Bible? Or better yet, why does God need Satan? Aren't we all born wicked with an evil sin nature baked into our hearts? What's really the point of Satan then? To fan our already evil sin nature into some roaring flame? Aren't we capable of all that on our own? But God included Satan and demons in the Bible. If God didn't need a Satan, we wouldn't have a Satan. And God cast him and his legions of demons to earth to have dominion over the planet and to muck with us, as Christianity teaches. I know that all good literature needs a protagonist and an antagonist. This should be our first clue that Christianity is fairy tale storytelling and completely man-made. So let's unpack our 3 verses. Our first verse is James 4:7. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. If you take all this literally, as I was taught to do for 25 years as a Christian, why do we have a devil to resist? Why is a devil attacking us? Why is a devil even a part of our spiritual reality? Who allows this to happen? Why does a sovereign, omniscient, loving God even allow us to be confronted by this type of evil such that we must stand firm and oppose Satan's attacks? One of the attributes of God's love is that it always protects. As we'll see in the next verses, God's protection is absent, though Christians will say that by putting on God's armor, we can withstand the enemy's attacks and protect and defend ourselves. Things like the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shoes of the gospel of peace, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit. Again, why is all this defending even necessary when a sovereign, all-powerful, benevolent, loving God is in charge? HG, it's to strengthen us and mold us into the image of Christ. It's to test our faithfulness. Think about that, though. We have to strengthen ourselves against the thing God will keep sending after us to strengthen us, which supposedly helps mold us into the image of Christ. Remember from Job, Satan can't attack us without God's permission, so God is ultimately responsible here. The buck stops with God. So Christians, stop saying God does not do the harm, it's all Satan. God's Satan's boss, if you will. God wrote Satan's job description and defined his role. Is this God's best method to strengthen and sanctify us? Can't he just make us strong? Think of all the unnecessary collateral damage and souls sentenced to hell for eternal conscious torment based on this nonsensical system. His plan is to allow his adversary to attack us, but he gives us armor to try to protect us so that we can withstand the next attack God permits. That's like a parent leaving a child rapist alone with their child at home, then saying to their child, "Hey, Jimmy, lock your bedroom door," but then handing the rapist a supernatural key to open it to at least try to rape the child. And hopefully the child is wearing enough armor to protect himself because, as we know from everyday experience, God won't step in to prevent the rape, and when the rape happens, it's our fault. How about not allowing the rapist into the home in the first place? God did not have to create, sustain, and perpetuate Satan and demons and allow them access to us in order to help us become righteous. How about not imbuing us with a sin nature from birth because he's cursed us? That sounds like what we'd more expect from an all-benevolent God of love and peace and truth. I get a lot of pushback from Christians in the comments saying, God didn't create Satan, Satan rebelled and God punished him. Fine, if you want to believe that. But what kind of punishment is it to give Satan dominion over the earth and to allow him and his demons to muck with his own creation? Satan's allowed to masquerade as an angel of light, and he has supernatural powers God gave him to do the work that God allows him to do to you, to me, your loved ones, my loved ones, and everyone else on the planet. That doesn't sound like punishment. In some twisted way, that sounds almost like reward. Yeah, HG, but ultimately Satan will be defeated in the end. Look, I don't care. That may not come for another 7 billion years, so we have to deal with the here and now. And by the way, God will really unleash Satan to do his best work during those end times. Interesting. And don't forget, Scripture tells us in 1 Corinthians 1:16-17, "For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together." Isaiah 45:7 tells us that God created evil. I can hear the comments now, he didn't create evil, HG, but rather discord, calamity, and disaster. Well, let Strong's settle that debate. Here's what it says about the Hebrew word ra, which is translated into evil in some Bible translations. The definition is evil, bad, wicked, harmful, unpleasant. The meaning is bad, evil. And the usage. The Hebrew word ra is a versatile term used throughout the Old Testament to describe anything that is morally, ethically, or physically negative. God brags about creating things that are morally and ethically negative. Lovely. Ra can refer to actions, thoughts, intentions, or conditions that are contrary to God's nature and commandments. So God creates things contrary to himself? Christian philosophers tells us that's impossible. As an adjective, it describes something as evil or wicked, while as a noun, it can denote wickedness or evil itself. So chew on that. Christians who always want to make excuses for their God. I don't know what else to tell you. And what does it mean that the devil will flee from you? For how long? How far away does he go? Does he ever return? I think the Bible teaches yes, he does. If the devil is tempting you today with, say, greed or lust, and you resist, does that mean, Christians, that tomorrow he won't come back and try again? Maybe he'll come back an hour later, and you'll have to resist again. I had an elder tell me that once you're a Christian, Satan and his demons will never leave you alone. And as the Bible teaches in Matthew, that after we're cleansed from an unclean spirit or demon, if we're not careful, 7 more wicked than the first, will come back to possess us, and we'll be in worse shape than before. The point is that all this resisting and fleeing is vague and exhausting. For someone like me, it created trauma. Was I resisting enough? Did I put on all the armor? How soon would the devil return? Would I be in worse shape than before? I was already on constant guard, ready to fight or flee. And for someone who was sexually abused as a child, this constant state of vigilance, this stance of anxious defense from fear or threats from the devil and his demons, this is extremely harmful and disruptive to everyday normal living. This is part of what PTSD is and how it forms out of Christianity. So let's move on to our second verse. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." We can move through this one pretty quickly because I've already commented on the absurdity of this, that we even have a devil God allows to prowl around and devour people. God eradicates entire populations in the Old Testament as his judgment for their wickedness and disobedience. But yet, he allows Satan and his demons to roam the planet looking for people to attack and manipulate, and succeeding, I might add. That makes sense. Pastors will sling this verse around from the pulpit to keep their congregants on edge and alert, vigilant, but they never connect the fact that it's God himself who crafted our reality this way. It's God himself who gives the devil permission to prowl around and devour. But H.G., Christ saves us and protects us from the devil's schemes. Our refuge is in him. Well, let me show you how that fails. Like me, millions of adults have been sexually abused as children. Christians will say that that abuse is the result of Satan prowling around and devouring people, and thus man choosing to sin. Either way, God didn't stop the rape, and who knows, he likely granted permission for it to happen. So no, Jesus doesn't step in to protect us. He's not our refuge. That's the thing. So many people comment on my videos that it's man who is evil and sins and does all the damage. It's not God's fault. He has to let things play out according to free will. They get mad at me for insinuating that God be implicated in the evil. Gosh, it must suck for Christians that Job is included in the canon because it pulls back the curtain and reveals God's true role in all this trauma and suffering. Are you aware of the lifetime of mental and physical health issues that erupt from childhood trauma? Are you aware of cognitive filters children construct out of their trauma that they carry for the rest of their lives? All that's explored more in my series on religious trauma if you want to check that out. God didn't protect me from childhood sexual abuse, and as a Christian, I now had to constantly contend with spiritual predators prowling around looking to attack and devour me. Not good for someone predisposed to anxiety disorders and panic attacks. Christians myopically think that all this satanic attacking and devouring refers to God protecting them from sinning. But when you've had a catastrophic evil committed against you, it changes the conversation. God and Jesus don't look so good. And we'll see in our next example, Jesus doesn't stop Satan from attacking, nor is he successful when Satan does attack. Our third and last verse is Luke 22:31. It says, "Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat." That's Jesus talking. Jesus warns Peter that Satan will test his faith, aiming to shake him apart and break him down so forcefully that he will fall, proving that God's faithful servant is lacking. First thing, Jesus and Satan are having conversations about how Satan can test people, again, forcing the issue that God and Jesus are ultimately responsible for how far-reaching Satan's influence goes and who Satan seeks, kills, and destroys, which Satan apparently does all the time this side of the rapture, and it's only going to get worse. Thanks, God, for letting Satan off his leash in the end times. Notice Jesus doesn't say, "Hey, Peter, I'll stop Satan from sifting you. I'll protect you." Jesus goes on to say, and let's read it straight from the Bible. This is Jesus talking. "But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers." But he, Peter, replied, "Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death." And Jesus answered, "I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny 3 times that you know me." Didn't Jesus just say that he prayed for Peter, that Peter's strength would not fail? And what happened? Peter denied 3 times that he ever knew Jesus. In other words, Peter's strength failed. Satan prevailed in that moment, despite Jesus' prayer. No, H.G., Jesus wasn't talking about Peter's faith in that moment. He meant overall that his faith wouldn't fail. Jesus promised that he would build the church off the rock that is Peter. Well, who besides Jesus, of course, do we associate as the father of modern Christianity? Is it Peter? Nope. It's Paul. In fact, do a little study to see how Peter and Paul differed in their understanding of Jesus' teachings and interpretations of Jewish law. Who won those debates? Whose truth do we follow today? Well, it's Paul's. Peter acquiesced to Paul, believing Paul had the real truth. So the church was built upon Paul's teachings. My point here, though, is not to open up a debate about this. It's to once again demonstrate the absurd notion that God and Jesus permit the perpetuation of Satan and demons, and they don't stop them from wreaking havoc on humanity when they know it's coming and could prevent it. For so many of us, this premise, this paradigm is at the root of our religious trauma. Christians will comment to me that it's God's prerogative how all this plays out. Well, here's the thing. Some of us don't like horror movies. Some of us shy away from bloodshed and wrath and destruction and demons. Some of us don't feel great that this is how God designed the game, regardless of whether he claims he's all-loving and perfect. In fact, this all calls into question his love and perfection. Some of us have seen and felt enough horror and terror in our lives, by God's allowance while he stood by and watched, to know it's unhealthy for us to be subjected to more because of the Bible. God should know this. This is one reason we reject Christianity. I want to close with this thought experiment. Let's pretend the Bible doesn't exist. Let's pretend we have to write the story of human existence, behavior, and reality today, knowing what we know. Would we write about a devil and demons possessing us? Is this how we understand the world today? Again, forgetting the Bible exists. Is this how we would explain things, how we would write things? Does this comport with our experienced reality today, knowing what we know about science, medicine, human behavior, sociology, and psychology? The only reason Christians believe in a devil and demons today is because they're in a book that's thousands of years old. And that's it. The only reason Satan is in our vocabulary today is because he's a character in the Bible. That's it. If we started over today, we'd have no evidence to support such an evil being. Science doesn't confirm it. Experience doesn't confirm it, at least not for many of us. But because the Bible introduces it, some people look to confirm things like demonic possession today. And the proof of that is specious at best. If demon possession is preached from the pulpit today, it's never properly examined to see if it actually makes any sense. Christians, do you know that spirit and demon possession is found in other religions? Yep. The concept of spirit or demon possession and related practices like exorcism are not limited to Christianity. They exist in other religions and cultural traditions, including Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, and many others. Yet you dismiss those accounts as false and unbelievable, but you'll believe your holy book and your pastors and your apologists. Think about that. Okay, that's it for today. As of now, I don't have a Patreon or sponsors, which is why I promote my book. Purchasing it is the best way to support my work and channel, which is fairly new. Right now, I have a little less than 100 subscribers. If you believe in my work and you want to help catalyze a broader awareness and conversation about religious trauma and the harm of Christianity, and I hope you do, you can help me grow the channel by subscribing, liking, sharing, and commenting on my videos. Let me know about what you think. And finally, keep an eye out for the documentary film Heathens that I participated in. It'll premiere later this year or maybe early 2026 on your favorite streaming platform. It takes a hard look at why Christians are leaving Christianity and the tension that causes in families and communities. So I'll see you again soon, and I really, really appreciate you being here. Thanks.